In every single negotiation, there is a hidden force that quietly sets the physics of the entire deal. It has nothing to do with your leverage or your logic. It's all about who establishes reality first. We're talking about the power of the very first number. So let's just start with a simple question. In any high-stakes deal you can imagine, what's the single most dangerous number? The one that carries the most risk. You'll find most people get this completely wrong. It's not the final price. Not even close. That number is just the outcome, the very tip of the iceberg. It's the result of a game that was probably won or lost long before anyone shook hands. The real danger lies in the move that puts the whole game in motion. It's the very first number that gets put on the table. Because that number, you have to understand, isn't just a suggestion, it's a weapon. It's a signal that fundamentally changes the physics of the entire conversation. Let's dig into exactly why that is. So the first signal we need to decode is how that first number acts as this invisible anchor. It just pulls the entire negotiation into its orbit. And this isn't some sales tactic. It's a deep-seated feature of how our brains work. There's a name for this, of course. Behavioral economists call it anchoring bias. It's our brain's hardwired instinct to give a completely disproportionate amount of weight to the first piece of information it gets. Once that initial number is out there, every other number is judged only in relation to it. It literally becomes the sun, and all the offers that come after are just planets trapped in its gravity. And this is the part you really have to grasp. The anchor doesn't just describe a potential outcome, it fundamentally creates the psychological playing field. Your logic, your reason, your spreadsheets, they all become secondary. The conversation is no longer about what's fair or what's based on market data. It's about the anchor. Now you might be thinking, okay, this is for buying a car or negotiating a salary. But this pattern is a universal force. It shows up in every single domain where value is on the table. The stakes change, but the physics, they stay exactly the same. Take a high-stakes hostage negotiation. The first demand, whether it's for money or something else, it doesn't just state a goal. It establishes the entire emotional landscape. It defines what's perceived as the realm of the possible, and it forces the other side to react inside that frame, no matter how extreme it seems. Or, let's bring it into our world, a venture deal. The very first valuation put on the table, whether it's by the founder or the investor, immediately becomes the center of gravity. The whole conversation about market size, the team, traction, all of it is now viewed through the lens of either justifying or refuting that first number. It defines the very aperture through which everyone sees the company's worth. And of course, a salary negotiation. The first number offered instantly sets the boundaries for the rest of the conversation. If a company starts low, the candidate wastes all their energy just trying to claw their way up to what's reasonable. But if the candidate starts high, they pull the entire potential range upward. See? The pattern is absolutely inescapable. So, how does this signal actually play out in a live negotiation? Well, it transforms the entire game from a debate about value into a battle over position. We call this the orbit of the deal. This slide really lays it bare. On the left, before an anchor is dropped, the game is still about trying to figure out objective value. But the moment a number is stated, the game instantly changes to what you see on the right. The search for truth is over. Now, a tug of war has begun, and the only question that matters is, how far can we move them off of their number? Think of it this way. Facts and data are like objects in zero gravity. You can look at them, you can examine them from all angles. But an anchor creates a kind of psychological gravity, and suddenly all those facts are being pulled toward one single, massive point. Your counteroffers, your arguments, they're all now fighting against this new, invisible force. And this is why it's so critical to understand this, because there is a severe cost for those who don't see the game being played. Hesitating or failing to set that first anchor means you've already started to lose before you've even made your first real move. Imagine the entire negotiation playing field for a moment. If someone drops a low anchor, it's like they've tilted the entire field downhill. It doesn't just set a low starting point, it drags the entire zone of possible agreement down with it. And the opposite is true. A high anchor pulls that entire zone upward. The final price almost always lands somewhere within the gravitational field of that first number. So, when you let the other side anchor, what really happens? Well, first, you're now playing defense inside their reality. Second, your counteroffers feel weak because they aren't proactive, they're just reactions. And finally, you end up conceding value, not because your position is weak, but because you lost control of the frame from the very first move. This all brings us to how elite negotiators see this dynamic. They don't see anchoring as some cheap trick. To them, it's a fundamental tool of strategy. They operate with an architect's mindset. They understand this quote implicitly. The first number isn't just a number. It is the act of writing the unwritten rules for the rest of the negotiation. It's a quiet but incredibly powerful move to establish control. And this is the key difference. Amateurs see the first offer as a price tag. Elite operators, on the other hand, they see it as a framing device. They aren't just trying to get a good price. They are deliberately constructing the reality in which that price will be debated. It's a calculated, strategic act of psychological architecture. Okay, so let's turn this entire analysis into a diagnostic tool you can use right now. To see these forces at play in your own world, you just need to ask yourself 3 very precise questions. First, think about your most important current negotiation. In that deal, who set the anchor? Was it you or was it them? Be honest. Who spoke the first number that really mattered and established the frame? Second, identify that number. What's the figure that all the counteroffers, all the justifications, all the arguments are now unconsciously revolving around? You need to see it for what it is, the center of psychological gravity in the room. And finally, the most important question is the one looking forward. What anchor will you deliberately and strategically set in your next negotiation to control the frame from the very beginning? Because the one who writes the rules is usually the one who wins.